Chase, we have more snow. It's cold out, but there are games that depend on us to warm things up. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling cold. I'm bummed. It felt like we went through the big snowstorm and then we were out of it, and then I thought we were okay. And this snow isn't bad. Like you could.
The
totally
snow's not bad. It's just
fine.
fucking cold.
It is fucking cold.
Yeah.
It is fucking cold.
Yeah, we got a lot of snow to deal with. Not a lot of snow, a lot of cold to deal with. Right.
But other than that, pretty good.
Yeah. It's February 19th. This is episode 412. It's a What You Been Playing. And tonight we've got a lot to talk about. We're going to give you an in-depth conversation on Avowed. We're going to talk about Warriors Abyss, tips and tricks, pencil puzzles. And then a couple weeks ago, at this point in time, there was a pretty significant PSN outage that really shined a light on game ownership. And we're going to have a conversation on the back half to talk a little bit about what does it mean to own a video game in the digital age. And spoiler warning, it's not great. Not great.
Sure.
But in the spirit of time, we're going to hop right into it. And Avowed is out, Chase. This is, in a lot of ways, kind of the kickoff for Microsoft in 2025.
I saw a television commercial about Avowed today. And while watching it, I was going, is this Avowed? Are they showing a television commercial for Avowed? And then at the end, it goes, Avowed. And I'm like, what the fuck? I didn't know we did that, especially for Obsidian games. That's exciting.
Yeah. It is exciting. And I'm excited because I have been somebody who has bought in heavily to Game Pass. And I think it's been like 6 or 7 years now when Microsoft kind of talked about, here's all these studios that you love that we own now. And then delays happened and mergers happened and COVID happened. And these games never came. And everybody's like, well, what the fuck, Microsoft? You have some of the biggest names in the industry, and you are putting stuff out. Obsidian has put out 2 games since this. They put out Grounded, which I absolutely adored, and they put out Pentiment, which I know you thoroughly enjoyed. Mm-hmm. But Obsidian is, I
feel bad I didn't.
It's a cool game. I think Obsidian is the ace up the sleeve of Microsoft. And I think people love Obsidian. And I think people at the same time downplay Obsidian. In the grand scheme of those names that Microsoft touts, Obsidian has been, I think, one of the most consistent for them. And I have put in well over 20 hours into Avowed. If you go and look up how long to beat, you can mainline this game in about 12 to 13 hours, they say. So it's a smaller scope game, but I do think it's probably like closer to 30 to 40 if you're doing a lot of exploration, which I am. So let's start here. You and I covered this game a few weeks ago in our monthly preview episode, and I thought I could tell you a little bit about what this is, because I don't think you know a lot about it, right?
I mean, it's a Skyrim alike. Yes.
Maybe, kind of.
I mean, it's a first person medievally magic-y swords and stuff, zombie stuff, RPG. Which is a Skyrim-y thing. It's open world, I imagine. Yes? No.
Kind
Okay.
of.
Different. Okay, kind of.
It's a lot like, basically it is, I guess you could say, to Skyrim what the Outer Worlds was to Fallout in a way. But I think it's a very cool, very wonderfully vibrant, very lean action RPG. It is set in the Pillars of Eternity universe. I've never played those games, so I don't have a lot to like call back to with that. You are playing a godlike. So a godlike is a being whose soul has been touched and influenced by one of the gods of the Pillars of Eternity universe. The crazy thing here is that you don't know what gods touched your soul in this game.
Sort of dragonborn, if you will.
Oh, potentially. You are also the envoy for the Emperor in this, and that's kind of like the story. You are being sent out to investigate with pretty limitless authority this plague that is causing all the weird mushrooms and spores and bark to grow on creatures, and that's where you see that really cool skeleton in the cover. And with this, your character has some of those features as well, which causes a lot of attention when you go and talk with people. And I think overall what they've built is something very competent, very focused, and quite approachable. Where bigger games out there right now, I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, your Baldur's Gate, your Elden Rings, this feels way more respectful of your time, way more respectful of just how they kind of give you freedom of choice, and especially compared to Skyrim that you were calling to earlier. But let's talk a little bit about what I think stands out so far and what I think is pretty interesting in this game. First of all, it's a $70 video game. It is included on Game Pass Ultimate. There's a deluxe edition that at the time of this recording doesn't matter too much, but it gave you 5 full days of early access to it. If you can't tell by my voice, I'm battling a cold. We had a longer weekend with President's Day, and I was able to put a lot of time into the game. So if you are a fan of Obsidian, you are in luck. Their writing is on brand. What you would expect from them is here. It's very, very well thought out, very creative, and mature. It's a mature game that covers love, loss, a lot of heavy stuff in the game, and I think they do a pretty good job of setting you up to explore that. And they give you very meaningful choices that I think allow you to inspect and go further with these characters based on your own moral compass, so to speak. It is a very fun video game. This combat is so addictive. You can play in third person and first person the entire game, however you want to play it. Mm-hmm. But unlike a game like Skyrim, unlike Baldur's Gate, this game doesn't really have a class. That's going to be a really weird thing. You're going to have a background that you pick, and that background will influence a lot of your dialogue choices, but it'll also give you a starting weapon. There's no proficiency that you get because you pick that weapon. It's just what you start with.
I heard you can even dual wield anything, right?
That's the crazy thing.
You can choose whatever you want in either hand.
So yes, absolutely. And I think that's what's really fascinating here. So not only can you dual wield, you have 2 loadouts that you can just swap by pressing Y. And in doing so, you can really do some pretty broken stuff. So I'm playing this with more of an arcane background in the game. And I am using a grimoire and a wand as like my main go-to. And then my second loadout is a second grimoire and a pistol. So I'm doing more ranged combat. And what's really cool about this
This
is
motherfucker got 2 books.
that's what's crazy. So hear me out on this. The way it plays out, when you get your wand, it's basically just a magical gun. And you don't cast spells unless you have one of these books. But what's nuts is once you get a book, you can then go in and just learn through an ability point one of the spells that are in the book. And each book has 4 spells in it. And what's even cooler is there's 3 levels to every spell. So if you just learn the spell, you no longer have to have the book in hand to use that spell. You can just put it on your hotbar. But if you have the book out and you've learned the spell, you automatically are now at level 2 for that spell. And that can be damage increase. It can be casting time increase. It is elemental. So you've got electricity, fire, you've got ice, and there's some really cool synergies that go in with it. But because of this, like, they really reward your curiosity, and you can do some pretty broken stuff, as I mentioned. I could go and learn 6 spells and put them into my hotbar. I could then have 1 grimoire in my loadout that has 4 different spells. And then on the backup, I can have another book with 4 spells I haven't learned. So in theory, I now have, 14 spells at my disposal that I can cast at any given moment if I want to do it that way. But I ended up going into more of an electrical build. I've got a really cool pistol that does electrical damage. My gear does that. And I've built a pretty broken area of effect build using a lot of those spells. Your companions will go through all of their moves on their own, but you can also hotbar their moves if you want to. But there's a really slick radial wheel that you can use just to execute their abilities in combat. I love this game for rewarding your curiosity. There's chests everywhere. You're going to get dopamine hit after dopamine hit after dopamine hit. And it does use a tiered gear system. So you're going to have rare,
Sure,
all that shit there with it. But the cool thing about it is they don't put stuff on your map. A lot of it is just listening to people talk, but they use a shimmer sound effect that gets louder the closer you get to where there could be some hidden goods. So if you're just like walking around a town and you hear something, you're like, you know what? I'm going to go look for this because that sounds like some good stuff. And every time that I've looked at like a mountaintop or a shed or a floorboard or a carcass, I'm like, I wonder if it has something. It always has something worth picking up, which is really cool. This is a game built on upgrades. So a lot of the times when you play a game like this, you always wonder, should I go to town and buy this gear that looks a little bit better than what I have? Or should I break down what I currently have and put that towards something bigger? You have a camp that you can fast travel to at any given moment. And in that camp, you can talk to your companions, you can enchant weapons, and you can upgrade weapons. So I think you get a ton of money just by killing shit and just opening stuff. So don't worry about selling your stuff. Break it down, break it down, break it down, because you need to upgrade a lot. And what's really cool is your companions will let you know in combat, yo, you need a stronger weapon. Like when you start fighting stuff, if it's not working
cool.
well,
Like in their barks and stuff.
yeah. So like they'll be like, yo, you need get a stronger weapon. And like, then you'll go back to camp and you'll upgrade it and get that. And again, like I think it pays. Like if you hear an interesting conversation when you're walking through a market, stop and listen to it. Oftentimes they'll tell you like, yeah, I left my bag behind here. I didn't mean to do that, but it's back underneath that wood. It's got that stuff we sold. And you'll always hear little things that will send you on a trip to find something cool. And again, like this game is just gorgeous. Like the colors are fantastic. The design's awesome. Your companions are really, really well fleshed out. I think Kai is my favorite. He is voiced by the same voice actor that does Garrus from Mass Effect. And he is a very remorseful soldier that is mourning the loss of his partner. And you are on kind of a journey of redemption because he did some pretty questionable things at the end of that relationship. And he lives with a lot of it. But I find that very cool. There is some fantasy racism and classism at play here, which sucks, but it's still there. And
sucks that it's in the game at all, or sucks that when you say sucks, what do you mean?
I mean, I think it's just like
like it's playing in well-worn territory for that kind of a game.
Yeah, and I don't know, man, like call me crazy, but I feel like that stuff is kind of on the ramp up in our world. And sometimes when I go into these worlds, I don't want to navigate that as well. And for me as a person, I understand it because it is part of life. And I think that leads me into, there has been the bullshit gamer attitude online of like, this is just woke garbage. Kai's gay, you know, and like I got news for people. There's gay people in the world that enjoy a lot of things in life, and they should not be reprimanded, and they should not be frowned upon just for existing. And I think that people who are looking at games as being quote unquote woke for being inclusive and representative of people that are in the world, it's really souring and really shitty. So that sucks.
Yeah, I can understand from like an escapism. Like it'd be nice to go play my video game and have a good time without having to like deal with these same themes that I'm dealing with in real life. But at the same time, I think it is, it's all dependent on how you handle it. And I'm assuming that a place like Obsidian that is known for handling this kind of stuff pretty well, would do right by it. But yeah, I mean, it is, if somebody's trying to say something like this is a piece of art in some form, and if somebody's trying to make a comment on the things that they're seeing both today and whenever they were thinking up this game, because racism was still there too. So it is all in how you handle it, and I don't know that offhand from or firsthand experience, but I get that. Like just wanting to go in and kill some monsters.
Well, and I like a depth to it too, but I think it is just a little well worn there. But it's not a distraction.
I'll tell you, the game I brought tonight does not worry about any of that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, we'll get into that, but later.
So, but before I get into what's not working on this, I'll just say, like, I would put this game right now for me, like, probably a 8 out of 10 is where if I was doing like a rating on it. And I'll get into some of the things that make me not put it a little bit higher than that here in a moment. But do you have any questions so far? Any thoughts, commentary?
Yeah, I mean, it's a different kind of game, but but it also has some similar tissue to a game that you were just recently talking about, of Kingdom Come Deliverance.
Yes,
that is also a game that is first person medieval setting, although much more grounded than the fantasy stuff in Avowed. RPG, story heavy, talking to a lot of people. How, I'm not asking you to really compare them or say which one's better, but when you're playing two games that are of similar styles or have that kind of connective tissue, do you go into Avowed? I mean, is it tough for you to go into a game that's so similar like that, or is it more exciting for you to be able to more directly compare and contrast when you're just coming off a game that has some similar style to that?
I think the best way I can compare it is like Avowed is pizza, and Kingdom Come Deliverance is like a steak dinner. I love pizza. It's arguably like my favorite food. There's a comfort to it. There's a familiar. It's easy. It's always going to be something I can kind of like rely on, where sometimes steak's not prepared to my liking. When it hits, it's like phenomenal. Like I love a good steak dinner. But in this case, I think
there are days where you don't want a steak, where it's like, oh god, I couldn't possibly.
Like
there
aren't
many days where I don't want a pizza.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thing. Like, this is a video game that has depth to it, but it doesn't take itself overly serious in its design. I think the subject matter does, but it's vignettes. So when you said it, like, is this an open world game comparatively? Kingdom Come is like, you can literally, you are just in that world and you're going places and doing shit, and you can kill anybody, and there's major consequences in that. And not that you don't have those for your decisions on Avowed, but it's like slices here. So there's like 4 major slices you go into, and those are open, and you can freely walk around and fast travel within them. but the world and the region itself is not open like a Kingdom Come.
A little bit like the planets of Outer Worlds.
Absolutely, exactly the same. So like it feels a lot more contained and a lot more focused and easier. Like, you know what? I've got 15 minutes. I'm going to open this up. I'm going to go and knock out a few bounties and be done with it. Where Kingdom Come, 15 minutes, you might load a bolt into your gun. And so like, it's very different. So it's hard for me because I appreciate both of those. But I think on this one, the scope of it is a lot more respectful of you and your time. And I honestly think what I've heard you talk about your fatigue and what you're looking for and what I know you like in writing, I think Avowed would actually hit a lot of the right notes for you on what a game does.
Like fantasy is not my preferred genre setting. But I liked Outer Worlds, but wasn't enamored by it. And I think it might be because it was still trying to be a little bit too much like Fallout. I wish it just it still was trying to be like, oh, we're over the top violence, but also in a funny sort of way.
Yeah. Here's a pie in your face.
Look at the capitalism stuff, and I guess I kind of wish they went more of an original direction in that. So in that sense, maybe Avowed is closer to from like a tonal perspective that I'm looking for.
I got a few more bullets here just to like talk about like what doesn't quite work for me in the game. So I do think ditching the traditional class system is really cool, but it was hard at the beginning because you don't have a direction you're going, and it can be very overwhelming. And there is a pretty big spike at the start on like your encounters. They do that with the skull system. So if they have up to 3 skulls by their name, like stay the fuck away from them. You can probably like hurt your way through 2 skulls. But I think at the beginning, it's like, well, I can mix and match all this stuff and I don't know how to spend my points and really start to make an engine that works here. So that can be a little cumbersome. It's very repetitive. You go to a new area, you're going to grab bounties, you're going to get a handful of side quests, and there's one major story beat you're going to do there. Like, it's the same thing every spot. It's almost to the degree of like old school games where it's like the same enemy, just a different color, and you know it's going to be tougher. It's kind of like that, and it is a bit repetitive for my liking, especially for this fantasy epic tale.
Do we know how long this thing is?
You can beat it if you just mainline it. They say 12 to 13 hours. Okay. But if you're doing it kind of like I am, which you want to knock out all that stuff. And I think if you mainline this game, you're going to have a pretty rotten time, by the way. This game is meant to be, lived in.
Yeah, in a similar way to Outer Worlds where, yes, you could mainline that and get through a bunch of it. But part of the game is exploring and talking to people and making connections and doing all that stuff.
One big thing that I think is bullshit is there's only one companion quest line. So like you have 4 companions that you can have in your party and only one of them has like a unique story quest to go and explore. That sucks because the companions are cool.
Only one of the companions at all? Or once you have 4 companions, only one of them gets the story?
No. Like they've only made one quest for your companion. Not like you have to like, okay, pick your companion, you're going to get a quest. No, like Kai is the only person they've wrote any sort of story to go deeper into who they are.
So the rest of the companions are just there.
I mean, they'll do like you can talk to them at your camp and stuff, but there's no deeper mission to go on with them. Sure. And that was, I mean, like if you played Mass Effect, you could pretty much go and do quests for all your party if you did your shit right. And that's not here.
If you wanted to do it right. Yeah.
And then the last thing, this is not really a reflection on the game, but I think games like this Chase are in a really weird space right now. A couple years back when The Witcher came out, I think it really flipped what we expected for games like Skyrim on its head. Shortly after that, Elden Ring came along, and then a game like Baldur's Gate, where you have these unicorn games that seemingly came out of nothing but love and resources that other studios don't have.
Just completely discounting Dragon Age now. I like it.
Well, the thing about that is though, like, Dragon Age Inquisition.
We've all forgotten about it. We all forgot about Dragon Age.
I have this written down. Dragon Age Inquisition was such a standout game of the year contender that and Baldur's Gate came around And I think that they knew that there would be similarities in what people saw for the formula, and they completely
not Inquisition. Dragon. Wait.
Veilguard that just came out
Veilguard, yeah.
is so different from that, because I think if they would have tried to make a game like Inquisition post Baldur's Gate 3, there would have been immediate comparisons.
Wait, was Inquisition the good one? I played Inquisition and did not like it. I bounced off.
I didn't like it. That's the one that won Game of the Year, though.
Did it?
Yeah.
That's weird. Okay.
Yeah. Man. But I think it's interesting.
People just being wrong, you know?
We're just at a weird point in time with game design, because you have these situations where I think you've had these masterpiece games kind of come out of nowhere, and either the studios are being, splintered and fractured down. They're being told to go and make a game as a service, or you've got Larian over here somehow doing a magician's act to build Baldur's Gate 3 that is this love letter with no add-on shit. So
even when they do that, like how do you follow it up? Because it's still you're still dealing with Wizards of the Coast, which means you're dealing with Hasbro,
right?
Who's a total shit show. Are they even going to let you make a Baldur's Gate 4? Yes, it was so popular that you should absolutely start making a sequel right now. Make us more money. But Hasbro's weird bullshit might make it that sequel would never see the light of day. Maybe somebody else has to eventually make it 10 years from now.
So I'll say this: Avowed's really cool. If you have Game Pass, this is a rare diamond on that service compared to some of the other stuff Microsoft's published.
Rare's a different company.
Oh yeah, Rare does Sea of Thieves, but that's a PlayStation game now.
And now that there's no such thing as an Xbox game, I look forward to playing Avowed on my PlayStation 5.
I'm kind of shocked this one did not hit that way. I don't know what it is. I don't know why they haven't announced plans for this to go to a PlayStation, but
I'm not shocked that they wouldn't put it out now. I'm sure there's still some timed exclusive stuff that's going to happen with these Xbox games, but but based on their comments, and I know we want to talk about that someday. I don't know when we will, but it's kind of exciting exciting for me that I got scared about Microsoft picking up all my favorite developers like Double Fine, and then I was like, all the games I'm gonna want to play are gonna be locked to Xbox, and now Xbox has fumbled the bag so hard that it turns out those are potentially multi-platform games again.
Absolutely. So that's a very long conversation on Avowed, but it's a pretty big deal. I think Obsidian has done a great job there with it. It's on PlayStation. It's not on PlayStation, on PC and Game Pass and Xbox right now. It'll be there soon. But that's my update on Avowed. I will be streaming it this Friday, and if you are tuning in, I'll probably be on the last chapter of that game. So you'll kind of see what it looks like when you're leveled up and all the stuff there. So come check it out. Chase, you've got some games.
Do you want to hear a stupid thing or do you want to hear a fun thing?
Well, both.
First. Yeah, you're going to hear them both, but which one do you want to hear first?
Stupid.
Okay. So Frank Cifaldi, the curator of the Video Game History Foundation.
Yes.
He put a skeet out a little while ago talking about
love a good skeet.
The last issue of Tips and Tricks magazine that the Video Game History Foundation had not had yet. So they have completed their collection of Tips and Tricks magazine. And that got me thinking, I read Tips and Tricks a little bit back in the day. It wasn't my favorite magazine because, you buy one and it has all the codes in it. And
sure.
The news stuff of it wasn't really all that robust. And, you just, like, once you have one of them, you don't really need more, right?
Yeah, you've had them all at that point.
Until there are new games that need new codes. And you're just like, I don't really need this. But one of the things that did make me keep coming back to Tips and Tricks time and time again is one Hardcore, which was one of their sections where people like put in their Armored Core units.
Okay.
Old Armored Core units. So you just get to see a bunch of pictures of cool mechs, and you're like, okay, I like that. I didn't play Armored Core, but I did like looking at mechs. And then they had the pencil puzzles, which because Tips and Tricks was at half of it at least was printed on newsprint, they could have these pages that had these Sudoku style Picross like puzzles on them. and you don't have to do any math or anything, but you just got to like make a little pixel puzzly thing that eventually you'd make a little picture, and I really liked it.
Yeah.
And so when Frank Cifaldi was talking about tips and tricks, I went, oh yeah, those pixel puzzles are pretty cool. I wouldn't mind going back and doing some of those again, just as like a fun thing. And then it clicked in my brain that I have a lot of meetings when I'm at work, and I don't have to be there for all of them. Like I don't have to be
Hey,
present
careful.
exactly, or
Careful.
sometimes they're talking about a subject that I'm not. I need to be there, but I don't need to contribute to. So it's like,
Yeah.
so what if I could just have these pencil puzzles by my side and I could do them,
Oh, you're
in
multitasking.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And it looks like I'm taking notes, and I'm definitely just making a little picture. Um, so I thought, okay, I can do this. Let's go grab these. To my knowledge, the Video Game History Foundation has like a database, but they don't have scans of these magazines available for you to just go find. Who does is Retromags. And so I went back to
Oh yeah,
Retromags,
yeah.
a place that we've used multiple times, and we've done deep dives and things like that on look backs of old magazines. And I was going through some of their archives, and I had to remember, okay, not every issue of Tips and Tricks had a pencil puzzle in it. So which ones had pencil puzzles? And I found a forum post of somebody asking just this same question, and like, okay, so I have my list of like, here is the issues of Tips and Tricks, and then their video game code books that came out every once in a while. They also had a bunch of pixel puzzles in them for some of them. Like, okay, I've got my list of what I'm looking for. So I'm going through Retro Mags and I'm pulling all the issues that I can find. They don't have some of them, so I sadly do not have a complete pixel puzzle or a pencil puzzle collection, but I grabbed them all that I could. I ripped out those pages specifically from the PDFs, and I ended up with 112 of these things. And I'm like,
Jesus.
all right, feeling good, feeling good. Little snag, little snag, because when I
Uh-oh.
looked at the puzzles, the scans of the magazine, some of the scans people had already finished the puzzle.
Oh
So the
no.
scan has the finished puzzle on it. Well,
Oh
that won't do.
no.
That obviously that won't do. Most of them weren't, but there were like 9 of them that had the puzzles completed. Like, all right, well, so I took out my limited Photoshop skills, and I don't have Photoshop on my computer. If I had Photoshop, this would have gone much better. I have GIMP, which is bad. I don't like GIMP. GIMP sucks,
Yeah.
but it is free and open source and all that, which is nice. So
Have you
now
just use
I'm
Figma?
sure, yeah, why not? I don't know. This worked. I at least knew how to do it. It's just time consuming because the keyboard shortcuts aren't the things that I remember from my Photoshop days.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So anyway, I was able to go, okay, well, I can take this clean puzzle from this one other sheet, and I can overlay it here, and that'll be fine. And because I'm me, I'm looking for like the color of the puzzle, because each newsprint would have, this one has blue lines and this one has pink lines. And I'm going to print these out on a black and white printer, so it's all stupid anyway, but I was making sure they match.
Oh my
Um,
god.
so I
You
did all that
sick
work.
child.
I did all that work, and then I had one last problem.
Oh.
Uh, in that one one magazine specifically, the 100th issue of Tips and Tricks, they had a bunch of pencil puzzles, and that one of the pages of the magazine of the Retro Mag scan was corrupted, so it only gave me 3/4 of the page, and the last quarter has a bunch of the what you need to fill in for the thing, so you couldn't finish the puzzle. And well, that won't do. But I remembered I owned this copy of this magazine. I remember it. The 100th issue was a big deal. It had a
I'll
bunch
repeat
of
myself. You sick
pixel
child.
characters. I am sick. So I went through all the magazines I have here in my house, knowing that I had that magazine as a kid. Couldn't find it. I
But
think
I bet you have some magazines to get through.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, I have a collection of Game Informers, so I know it's not a part of that because those are all Game Informers.
That
And
you
then
read for the stories, yes.
yeah. And then I have a section that's, okay, here's all my Nintendo powers, which is not a lot. I don't have a lot of Nintendo powers, but I got some. And then I've got some that are just, okay, this is
Who does
Play
have power, you
magazines,
know?
this is EGMs, this is Pocket Gamer. There's like a bunch of random ones. And it's like, okay, so it's got to be in this set. It wasn't in that set. I think I've gotten rid of them at some point because what do I need tips and tricks for these days? What do I need any of them for these days? But
Yeah.
especially those. So I couldn't find it. I was heartbroken. And I looked on archive.org and I found somebody had another scan
That sick
of
child.
issue 100. And that one was a lot blurrier than the scans you got from Retro Mags, but it was a clean version of
Listen, watching blurred stuff has never stopped me from watching it. I will tell you that much
that.
right now.
It was usable enough that I was like, okay, I've got it. That was
Yeah.
112th, the 112th one I needed, and I got it.
All right.
So here's here here's a Wario for you. Look at that Wario. Nice, nice. That's the first
Wow.
one. You know, I did like here's a Bomberman. I got a lot of these. I'm pretty sure this is a Yoshi. We're getting there. We're
It's
getting
Yoshi.
there. So yeah, so don't tell my work that I'm doing these when I should be like paying more attention in meetings, but it's been like a really nice zen thing to just have
Yeah.
at my desk and do when somebody's talking about something that doesn't matter to me.
My wife
like
is like a puzzle fiend. She has. I got
loves
her.
Picross.
She loves Picross.
I've talked about Picross before.
I actually gifted her the New York Times puzzle or game thing this year because she still does Wordle. She has like a Wordle that's like 8 different Wordles at once, I think. But she's very similar. Like she has to have that sort of stimulation, that sort of like brain thinking, the way her brain works with it. That's cool, man. I think that's a smart way to go.
Yeah, it's a fun little thing. Like I don't have to think too. Like it's despite being called puzzles, it's just this is box C4. These are the These are the 4 little places you need to.
Have you seen those paint gem things? I got her some of those too, where it's basically it's like a pin that has a sticky tip on it, and you use that to grab these kind of bezeled plastic pieces. It's like, okay, this color is F2, and you like put together these little things. Sure. Yeah.
So just a fun. Stupid thing
that's
that
cool.
Reminds me of some nostalgia of my video game youth, and I've been enjoying that. All right, awesome. Let's talk about the fun thing. That is also kind of stupid. Okay. Warriors Abyss. Bobby, this is a video game that got announced and released last week.
Chase, you got too many you already got one Warriors game this year.
I know.
What is going on?
I'm fucking shocked. Omega Force put out 2 Warriors games in 2 months. I'm fucking feasting.
This was the the state of play, right?
Yeah.
And this is current
from last week.
Okay.
And they announced this and said, by the way, it's available today. It's I think it's $25.
Okay.
And it's a roguelite. It's specifically a Hades, I would say, like Hades with maybe a couple of Vampire Survivors things attached to it.
The 2 darlings of the indie world.
Yeah, kind of. And this game is not better than either of those games, but I'm still having a pretty good time. So it is a roguelite. You're kind of going through a dungeon. There are 4 levels to the dungeon, and there's 8 levels to a level. Does that make sense?
Yes.
8 sections that you go through before you can descend to the next level, and then you go through another 8, and then you go down. So that's kind of the setup, and you're going through hell. The whole idea is that.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. You didn't play Final Fantasy Dissidia, did you?
No.
Of course you didn't. Why would you? It was a PSP game.
Not for me.
The story of Final Fantasy Dissidia is that Chaos, Chaos, right? We got to kill Chaos. So Chaos is out there. He's causing some havoc. And I forgot who the nice version of Chaos is. The good one that is in Final Fantasy sometimes. Anyway, she calls all the Final Fantasy
Is it
heroes.
Shiva?
No. Shiva's just a summon. But she calls, again, forgot her name, doesn't really matter. She calls all the Final Fantasy heroes to come in and like fight for her side to fight Chaos. And Chaos goes, well, fuck you, I'll bring in Sephiroth and Kefka and all those guys, and they'll fight for me. They'll be my champions. And a similar thing is happening here. Except the bad demon guy is named Goma, and I also forgot the name of of the good one that's on your side. But he brought you here, and you is basically, from what I can tell, every character from Dynasty Warriors and every character from Samurai Warriors, which
Oh
is
wow.
an extremely large cast. You don't get all of them to start with, though. You
Yeah.
start with a handful of characters, and then as you play the game, you will get these
Is it gotcha
souls.
style that you're getting them?
It's not. No, it's not gotcha
Okay.
at all. It is you're collecting these souls as you play the game, and then when you die or win a run or whatever happens, you come back, you keep those souls, and then you get to spend those on this big tree of of spheres that are out there. That is just this big hero grid, and you have to buy things that are connected on the grid, so you can't just go, oh, I want
Leapfrog,
that
yeah.
character. Yeah, I can't. You can't just go for Sao Sao right
You got to
away. You have
spec
to
into Lubu.
kind of, yeah. Like
Yeah.
Lubu is one of the ones who's at the top of the tree, and you're like, okay, if you really want Lubu, you've got to like
Oh yeah.
collect all the characters to get you to Lubu. But maybe some characters that you want are off some of the branches of that, and maybe you can go that way. So you're
Did you
collecting
say you get
characters as you
different
go.
gear too with them?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So you as you unlock characters, they all have a starting weapon, and then they all have some special weapon that you can randomly find in the dungeons that you're going through. I've probably put about 10 hours into this game, and I found one special weapon,
Got it.
and it's for a character I absolutely hate. So I was
Awesome.
like,
Yes.
it's nice to have the weapon, but God, I don't give a shit about this character. So what when you're collecting characters and spending your resources on these, each character you unlock also gives you a permanent stat buff of some
Oh,
kind,
all right.
attack or health or something like that. And that's where it really starts to feel like Hades for me, because
Yeah,
when you're
yeah.
first playing the game, your sessions are like 15-20 minutes. You're very squishy. You can get
Mm-hmm.
through some stuff and you can do some damage and you can find a cool build, but also, you just don't have the juice to get much
Yeah.
further. So you're gonna die. And then you go back and you do the loop again and again and again. But as you start unlocking a lot of characters, you're getting those little kind of micro buffs, and eventually you're getting to the thing of like, okay, well, just my base character, no matter who I pick, has so much health or has so much attack power that I'm more or less able to just get through these early levels with no problem. And I remember that being an issue I kind of had with Hades at some point of, I loved this game when I was going in for 30-minute sessions, but now I'm going in for an hour and 30-minute sessions, and just knowing that I've got so much health, I've got so much attack, I'm going to get to the end. It's just going through the whole thing,
Yeah, you gotta
and
jump in.
I kind of wanted this to be a shorter thing. And I'm not to that point at Warriors Abyss yet, but I know it's going to happen based on the amount of characters I've unlocked and already how much longer the sessions are getting as I play. So that's something I'm kind of a little bit weary about, but
Do you think
so
that
far
if
it's been okay.
you, I mean, I know that you compared it to two other games already, but
Mm-hmm.
I guess my only question I have for you is, do you think you would like this game without the Warriors trappings that it has
No,
in it? Okay.
nope. I think it's fine.
Yeah,
I think the a lot of the stuff that you're getting is kind of opaque,
sure.
or just feels very slight. Like, oh, I got a 2% buff to attack or whatever. Oh, I got a blah 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 to defense. There are some that are unique, because every time, this is one of the other big parts of the game, is that whichever character you choose from the beginning, and all of them have different ways of attacking, even though it still very much plays like a Dynasty Warriors, where it's a lot of
Yeah.
square, 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 triangle, and there are all sorts of attack trees off of that feels like a Dynasty Warriors game, which I like. That's cool that they kind of brought that into a roguelite system. Um, but as you're finishing the eight the eight levels within a level, each one of those you find this tree to make a bond, and you can make a bond with any of the characters you've unlocked. And when you make a bond, you get a couple of boosts,
Cool.
and those boosts, depending on which one of these, like I think it's like 12 medallions of the different kind of boosts that there are. The more that you stack up boosts in there, sometimes you'll unlock an extra ability because you have 3 attack
Sure.
boosts.
Sure.
Or, this guy had, you got your fire attribute up to level 3, and that means that now your charged attacks will leave a burn.
Oh, okay. That's
Where
cool.
normally it'd be like, oh, I'm at level 1, I got a little fire resistance. So if an enemy's using a fire attack, I take a little less damage. But you will get to these kind of milestones where it goes, okay, this is the good one now. And that's kind of where it feels like Vampire Survivors, where you'd spec into a couple things each run, and then those things would get better, and then at some points they would get really good. And
Okay.
that's kind of what this does. So it's like, okay, I boosted my attack once, fine, I get a little attack. I boosted my attack twice. Now I can interrupt enemy attacks, which is a really useful thing because the enemies swarm you and there's a bunch of shit that's going on. So being able to do an attack that is able to knock them off their guard is pretty great.
That's rad.
There's a lot of neat stuff, and so you're building these bonds as you go, and you can only have 6 bonds equipped at a time. So when you get more people, it's like, okay, well, I got to pick and choose which people I want, and those people can come in as like assist characters at the ends of your combos. So it's like, oh, now Guan Yu just showed up and he did like a big swipe attack, and then he leaves, and then it goes on a cooldown, and I can bring him back later. So that stuff is kind of cool. So you get to play as whichever character you want, but you're kind of able to spec into being able to have other characters join you,
Sure.
and that's pretty neat. It's fine.
Yeah.
Like you said, like if it didn't have the Warriors branding on it, if I didn't get to play as Gan Ning or Hattori Hanzo from Samurai Warriors, it certainly wouldn't have the same
Oh, you
appeal
mean
to
from
me.
Kill Bill?
Sure. It wouldn't have the same appeal to me, but it does. So it does.
All right.
And that's kind of enough for me. It's like a fun cool down game. I'm still playing Dynasty Warriors Origins and having a great time. I just finished chapter 3 tonight. And now I'm fully set into the army that I'm with, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the story continues to progress, even though from like a historical story perspective, I already know what happens, but seeing how they portray it is going to be fun. But this is like a cool thing to cool down with and go, yeah, I'll do a run or two with this, and it can feel kind of addictive, and it's kind of cool to get to a point of like, okay, I know I want to get this character, and he's going to take 5,000 of these souls, and I've only got 2,000 so far, so I need to get this far into a run to make sure I'm getting that stuff. And oh, here's like a treasure box that I could go get, and it's like an extra challenge, but if I get that treasure box, I can get some extra souls, and that'll help me get to that character better. um so I think it's just pretty solid. I've gotten to the 4th level, the bottom level,
Okay.
and I don't think I've faced the final boss, but I have faced like his champion, which was a big scary Lubu, and I almost had him, Bobby. I was so close, so close. And I'm sure there would have been like a bigger boss fight at the end that would have immediately killed me. But yeah, it's a pretty neat little
you
thing.
own it, like you bought it,
I own
I'm
it,
sure
yeah.
digitally, right? Like I'm sure you own this, and there's nothing that's ever nothing that's going to ever keep you from not having this game, which is great.
Totally, yeah. There certainly wouldn't be any, if some kind of network for the PlayStation went down, I'm sure I could still
absolutely
play everything that this
you
game
could take this to
offers,
your
right?
parents' house, I'm sure, on a weekend and play it there if you ever.
Oh, totally. Actually, I don't know if it does have any PSN integration. I don't think it does. So I might be able to do it.
Okay.
But yes, I see where the transition we're going in.
We were going to talk about this last week, but we had the state of play, and we touched on it briefly, like kind of tongue in cheek. But a couple weekends ago, there was I think one of the biggest outages for PlayStation since that 2011 one where they like shut it down for a month. And
the weirdest thing is they didn't have an answer for a while.
That's what makes me worried. And I know, like, I'm assuming this was some sort of like DDoS attack, on this, but there's a lot of like concern right now, I think, for this, because last year There's a lot of people upset about having to link to a PlayStation account on Steam, and they're like, hey, I don't trust them because of all the stuff they have. And I think that this would have probably, if they, I mean, they should have be more transparent. Why the fuck was this out? Tell us what was going on. I mean, Microsoft
I can understand from a perspective of, you know, if it was a DDoS attack, you don't necessarily want to give the trolls the win by having to announce, hey, they took us down. But at the same time, does that outweigh the importance of telling your paying audience why your shit isn't working?
Correct.
And I'm not sure the answer to that is yes. So I wish they would have said something more.
Yeah, I think the communication was piss poor on how this played out. But what was even more upsetting was we are entering into a period, Chase, where not only preservation is at risk, but I think like being able to play what you quote unquote have paid for. Yeah. Whether you own it or not, you've given money to have this. And for it to be this fragile where I mean, especially like, you know, internet's gotten faster, but there's still a lot of rural areas that suffer outages quite often outside of the network.
Without internet at all.
Correct.
Which makes, so my big problem with this is that, sure, when I play a game like Destiny that is promising, we are a game that is always online, and you get to play with other people, and you get to go to these worlds, and it's all communicating with a server. So yes, when PSN's down, obviously I know that I'm not going to be able to play Destiny. But there are also a ton of other games that will still check with PSN for
absolutely
lots of different things. And some of those are skippable, optional, like I know like Persona games or Metaphor, I think, has like things that will check in with PSN to show you what other people did. Like Catherine was definitely one of these, where it's like, oh, I made this choice in Catherine. Here's what the rest of the people who have played Catherine have chosen, and you get to see the poll stuff there. And if you weren't connected to PSN or Xbox Live or whatever, it just didn't show you that stuff. Oh, you know, this was your choice, but you don't get to see what other people's choices were. And that's fine. You could still play the game offline. But then there are other times, and I was reading a Polygon article that was really one of the things that kicked off wanting to have this discussion, where the author was talking about, you know, wanting to play PSN at this time, realizing there was an outage, or wanting to play PlayStation at this time, realizing there was the outage, going through their games and struggling to find ones that were working because all of them had to check in with PSN at some point, and they couldn't do it. I think they were talking about like FIFA or something, and they couldn't go in and even play a game because the game itself had to check in with PSN before you could even play a completely offline single player mode. And that feels bad.
It feels really bad. And I think that, like, you know, I wrote a little blurb in our show notes here, but I'll call to it here for the audience, that the Switch had really set us on this course of mobility yet again. And you mentioned the PSP earlier, and obviously the Vita, but those were things that like were designed to be on the go, that regardless of internet connectivity, you could play those. And I think that we're entering into a period where the Switch has had a few of these areas where it does need to phone home, not as much. But you've got a
couple games that were like the cloud games on the Switch.
Totally.
Like the Resident Evil and
Control. Yeah. And now
like,
you've got...
And I didn't want to buy any of those games.
No.
One, I didn't care about those games. But two, the idea of, like, it's the fucking Switch. Like, the point is that you take it with you and you go do other stuff with it.
Correct.
So the idea that I would buy a game that I could completely not play if I wasn't at home was absurd on its face to me.
You got the Steam Deck now. I've got an Ally. Sony and Microsoft both have said that, or well, Microsoft has said as much. Sony is rumored to be returning to handhelds. And I have to ask the question, like, how does this work? There was a game that I was playing on my Steam Deck on a flight that was working great. It crashed. And then when I went to play it again, it did not have the internet to start up. And I'm like, well, fuck, now I've got 2 hours where I don't get to keep playing this game. And I don't know what the solution is there. But I think when we start to look at mobility, and I think when we start to look at ownership, Are we trading conveniences here for preservation, for access, and downright ownership? Like, you have been a very loud voice on this show, way more than I have been, on beating the drum of subscriptions, beating the drum on digital. And I've just kind of embraced it. Like, I was always on the fringe a decade plus ago on moving to my streaming services and all that. Like, I like the convenience. You are able to go and stack through or go through stacks of magazines to find stuff from decades ago.
Yeah.
We're like, I just kind of move to the next thing when it comes to this stuff. But there's something.
And I still like my digital libraries too, but
the convenience of it, yeah.
Yeah, but it is really that second word that is doing a lot of the lifting, is a library. Like the thing that, you know, I need that stuff to stay alive in some way.
Mm-hmm.
I joked at you a number of times, and to be fair, I'm probably going to keep doing it.
Not fair.
But you were an early adopter of Google's whatever the fuck they
Stadia.
Yeah, Stadia.
Yeah.
And I was very hesitant on that, knowing, like, just seeing.
I did not keep it. I returned it as soon as I got it.
I remember. Yes, but you still bought it. You still pre-ordered.
I'm still an idiot. Yes.
And it didn't take all that long for it to crash and burn, and then for all the games to dry up and the system to dry up, and they said, "Oh yeah, well, we're shutting this all down." And anybody who invested into that system, invested into that ecosystem and that library, shit out of luck. Fuck you. Sorry. You don't, like, yeah, you own the game, but who cares? The servers are down. You can't play this anymore. And that sucks. That is the worst case scenario for this kind of stuff. And that's why I get so touchy about this kind of thing. Like, there are certain games, you know, yes, you can play Destiny right now. Eventually you won't be able to play Destiny anymore. They'll take those servers down. It might be decades from now, but they'll take the servers down and you won't be able to play it anymore. And even right now, you can't play Destiny the way it was before, because it's they changed the stuff that's in there. They put stuff in a content vault. They changed the story stuff, and you just have to deal with the version you get now. Same with like a World of Warcraft, any of these games as a service. They, from a preservation standpoint, from a going back and remembering what this thing was like, the only really real way you get to do it is through ephemera stuff now. It is reading magazine articles. It's watching an old YouTube video of somebody talking about this. But in terms of like putting your hands on the controller and playing a game just like it was a long time ago, is becoming a rarer and rarer thing. Like rarer than you'd get with the retro games that you can play now, because, you know, it's going to be expensive because retro game collecting is fucking stupid. But if you had the money and if you found it, you could buy an NES and a copy of Super Mario Brothers and play that game just the same way that somebody played it, you know, back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And you can't do that with a lot of these kinds of games anymore.
It's even like, this is such a weird little hyper specific situation, but, you know, Steam had put out recently, like 4 months ago, that you don't own the game. Basically, they changed what that looks like.
Right.
But they also updated their family sharing capabilities, and they removed some restrictions in doing so. So the way it plays out, Kingdom Come Deliverance was purchased by my cousin. I was curious. I started playing it, really enjoyed it. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and buy this so I can play it whenever Jason's playing it, because I want to have it. I like it that much. I go to load up my copy of it, and it's like, hey, your save file doesn't work on this. I'm like, wait, what the fuck? And the crazy thing is the version that Jason bought, there was a Steam pre-order bonus that was a DLC mission.
Oh.
And so when I was playing it off of his license, I had that mission included. But the version I got, you can't, it's literally only on pre-order. So you cannot get that DLC any way, shape, or I will pay money for it today. I will buy it. Right. But so now I've bought a copy of a game that I can play only when my cousin isn't playing it, unless I want to lose 24 hours of gameplay and start over. Now, I've heard that on the first game they did something similar and they ended up releasing it. But it's not only just like the digital library, it's these weird handcuffs they're putting onto it with add-ons and digital shit. And not that, like, again, family sharing is a very niche thing right now, but I think it just goes into you are really just at the mercy as a consumer of these things in a big way.
Well, and here's the real issue is that the solution is also the problem, and that is piracy. Like
Yeah.
the reason they're putting so many end user license agreements, the EULAs,
Yeah.
and making you jump through all these hoops is that they don't want the game to be easily downloadable and
Yeah.
shareable to the point that people would just share their copies and
I
they'd
blame the
never make a
Dreamcast.
dime again. Sure, blame the Dreamcast, blame shareware PC games of old, um, but that's a real concern, and I understand that concern.
Yeah.
Um, but it's also made buying and owning video games a fucking nightmare.
It really
Um,
has. It really,
and
really has.
and the solution part of it is piracy. like,
Well, and not only that,
like
man, but
yes,
they're removing the ability to have physical games.
right.
Like, I mean, Sony and Microsoft both have, and I mean, we don't know yet. I'm assuming this is, I think they've confirmed it. Maybe it's already in the video for the Switch 2 that it'll take, I think they confirmed it'll use your old cards. But regardless, there are still consoles being pushed in the direction of like, hey, digital only. The game that you were talking about, Warriors Abyss or Abyss Warriors,
Yep.
digital only. Like, there's some games that are coming out right now, even when they make physical media. And I got news for y'all. If you are following along with the tariff conversation, one of the first things they're going to do to get around that is just go straight digital. Like, if
Yeah.
you are into physical media and you want to maintain the price you have, physical media that is imported and shipped in and is going to be taxed and have all that shit on it, the tariffs will absolutely push us deeper and faster into the digital realm.
And they were already pushing us there to begin with
Yep.
because they can charge the same price for a video game without having to make packaging, without
Correct.
having to do distributing, so
Correct.
that it's better for them. And also, Bobby, let me ask you, outside of a couple of very stringent hoops you have to jump through for Steam,
Mhm.
how do you return a digital game? How can you take a digital
Steam is
game to
actually the
GameStop?
easiest.
Well, yes, but it's easiest, but it still has these hoops. You have to do it within this amount of
Oh yeah,
time.
yeah.
You can't have played like the full game and then returned your
No,
game.
man. There's no
But if
renting. There's no
I
returning. There's none of that. There's no
yeah, if I played
lending.
Warriors Abyss and went, this game fucking sucks. I want to return this. I want to take it back to a store and get some credit to buy a new game. Sony's gonna go, fuck no, you can't. Like that's our
Yeah.
$25 now. Get fucked. Get
Yep.
banked. And I have no recourse for that. I'm glad I kind of like that game because it's because I wouldn't get that money
Oh,
back.
dude, I've been burned digitally a lot
Yeah.
on shit.
And I'm
And
not
that's
saying that GameStop or any mom and pop video game store are good these days. Like you go in and you look at the prices of everything and you go, oh, this
Oh,
is
well, here,
fucked.
I mean, I'll
We're
answer
all
that
fucked
question
video
even
games.
further for you. When I bought that copy of Kingdom Come and I realized I couldn't play it, I
Yeah.
went to return it, but I've got 20 hours on file playing the game.
Oh no!
Yeah.
So you've played too much of the game, and
Yeah.
yet it's also just enough of a different version that you
Yeah.
can't use your save file.
Yeah.
That is some real catch-22
Yeah.
fuckery.
It's fuckery, man, for sure. So you're right. Like it is so like all of this, I love the convenience. I will buy into this stuff. I'll even pre-order digital games like a dummy, but it's one of those situations where I think that we have been coddled by convenience without the reality of what coming off the teat truly means.
Yeah.
And at this point, there's like, you're not getting this clown back in the box, dude. Like this is it. And unless something drastic happens, which I don't even know what that means at this point.
Well, and we're dealing with that in so many more industries outside of
100%.
video games as well. And you talk about home prices, you talk about like all sorts of capitalism, late stage capitalism shit, where you're like, something's got to give at some point,
Yep.
and we're still just waiting for the bubble
Yeah,
to burst
dude, it
in all of
sucks.
these kinds of industries. Because yeah, I feel like we need some sort of revolution in the way that you own video games, that You know, is having some kind of digital if you're going to stay digital, having some kind of digital library that can move from system to system.
Yeah.
And it sounds like something like the Switch 2, they said is going to be compatible with most games, and I imagine the most means just there's a handful of
Weird
weird edge
Joy-Con things.
cases
Yeah.
that require Joy-Cons or something like that. Yeah, is 1-2 Switch going to work on a Switch 2?
Labo, the
Maybe
Mario
not.
Kart
Labo
thing.
stuff. Yeah, that stuff's possible.
Yeah.
You know, maybe the what's the
Ring Fit?
Yep. Yeah, is Ring Fit going to work on a Switch 2? Who knows? So yes, you're going to have some of those edge cases, but it's really important not to just have backwards compatibility or not to pay lip service to it, but to actually have some kind of ownership and
Yeah.
retain those licenses. If that's the only thing you can own is the license to play a game, maintaining those licenses so that you can keep playing those games in the future.
Yep.
And that's because if I don't have that, then you know, I go back to the piracy thing. Because while yes, it's illegal, it's the best way I can find to play an old game and have it and know that it's going to work and be able to put it on different devices and have it work in all of those situations. And the offerings that I'm getting from Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo are not nearly as usable as the stuff I can just download a ROM and play. And until they are, I can't get rid of the idea of doing piracy because it is the solution while still also being the problem. And that's tough.
It's tough, man. This is a conversation that we've definitely talked on many times here, and I think we're going to have to talk about it more in the future. But this recent outage definitely made Chase and I want to have a pause and talk about all these things happening with it. And we'll figure it out. We're going to keep playing games here. I'm going to keep pre-ordering digital shit like a dummy. And
jailbreak your analog pockets. It's the best way to do this.
We've had a really cool week so far. Part 3 of Dead in the Water continues to be a great time. I don't know what it's like for you to watch that, like especially if you've played this game. Maybe it'll be interesting to watch, but I think if I've never played it, I don't know. We're playing a slow game. We're playing the Return of the Obra Dinn, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's a very surprising game. It's a very cool game.
Games are always tough like that because
it is.
You know, if you know something that the person playing it doesn't, you just are yelling at your screen. But yeah, it's a difficult time. I imagine anybody who has played that game is probably not having the best time watching us fumble.
100%.
But we're having a great time.
We're having a great time. And then tonight was episode 412, where we talked about a few video games and the state of digital ownership. I am feeling better, and I'm hoping to do that morning Avowed stream. So I'm going to try a 10 a.m. stream on Friday and show off a little bit of Avowed. If you want to know more of what I do on the internet besides repost our stuff here, you can follow those links there. And Chase, you've been a busy bee. Why don't you tell the folks what you got going on?
We've been busy.
Hey,
Bobby joined me on the latest episode of Go Play a Star Wars, which came out
That was
today.
so much fun. That was fun.
It's,
yeah.
You know, I hear you like Star Wars, so you were
I am
a
a
very
fan.
good get for the show.
Yeah.
I think we had some fun conversations while I still fumbled around in Star Wars Battlefront 2. It's a game
I hope to come back.
like.
I hope to come back.
Yeah, I hope you do. So go check out Chase Gameplays and watch Go Play a Star Wars. It's a lot of fun. And then I've got another podcast that I do with my good friend and friend of the show, Pierce Forshane. It's called Pilot Program, where we watch the first episodes of every television show ever made. Our last episode came out earlier this week, and it was on Barry, the HBO show, which was excellent.
Very cool.
And we had a guest on there for that, my coworker Justin, and I think we had a really good time and had some good conversations. And we announced that our next episode is going to be on Columbo, which I'm very excited by. So we haven't scheduled when that's going to be, but look for that probably early mid next month. But,
nice.
That'll be exciting. I love the idea of Columbo, and I'm looking forward to actually sitting down and watching it and having it.
Very cool, man. Well, we will be back Friday morning with Avowed, and then next week, Next Fest monthly preview. and Monster Hunter. Huge week for the show. Big week for the show. We'll be posting more about that, but lots of stuff between Chase K Play